Mentuhotep III, the architect of Egypt's Middle Kingdom. The sands of time have obscured many of the great rulers of ancient Egypt, but the name Mentuhotep III still resonates through history. Born into the twilight years of the 11th dynasty, Mentuhotep III was a pharaoh whose reign was marked by ambition, innovation, and a relentless drive to unify and strengthen a divided nation. His story, like the monuments he built, stands as a testament to his vision and leadership during a pivotal era in Egyptian history. The early life of Mentuhotep III. Mentuhotep III was born into the royal family during a period of considerable transition for Egypt. His father, Mentuhotep II, is credited with reuniting the country after a century of disunity known as the First Intermediate Period. This era had seen the fragmentation of the central government and the rise of local warlords, who vied for control over their regions, leaving Egypt a divided and unstable land. Growing up in such a volatile environment likely had a profound impact on the young prince. He would have been acutely aware of the fragility of his father's accomplishments and the importance of maintaining the unity and stability that had been so hard-won. As the heir to the throne, Mentuhotep III was groomed from an early age to be a strong and capable leader, one who could build upon his father's legacy and ensure that Egypt remained a united and prosperous nation. Mentuhotep III's early education would have included training in the military arts, administration, religious practices, and the complex political landscape of his time. He would have been surrounded by advisors, priests, and military leaders, all of whom played a role in shaping his understanding of what it meant to be a pharaoh. This preparation was crucial, as he would soon face the immense responsibility of ruling Egypt. The rise to power. Mentuhotep III ascended to the throne around 2010 before the era Common, following the death of his father. By this time, Egypt had been largely reunited under Mentuhotep II's rule, but the scars of the First Intermediate Period had not fully healed. The new pharaoh inherited a kingdom that was still recovering from the turmoil and division of the previous century, and his task was to consolidate his father's achievements and bring lasting stability to the land. Mentuhotep III's rise to power was not marked by the dramatic battles that characterized his father's reign. Instead, his ascension was a relatively peaceful transition, suggesting that Mentuhotep II had successfully established a stable and centralized authority by the time of his death. However, the absence of major conflicts during this period should not be taken as a sign that Mentuhotep III's reign was without challenges. On the contrary, he faced the ongoing task of maintaining the unity of a kingdom that was still in the process of healing from years of internal strife. As a new ruler, Mentuhotep III would have had to quickly assert his authority and make it clear that he intended to continue the work of unification and restoration that his father had begun. This would have involved not only maintaining control over the various regions of Egypt, but also ensuring that the nobility and local governors remained loyal to the central government. To achieve this, Mentuhotep III likely relied on a combination of diplomacy, religious authority, and, when necessary, military might. Architect of the Middle Kingdom. Mentuhotep III's reign is often seen as the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, one of the most prosperous and culturally rich periods in Egyptian history. His rule marked a time of significant architectural, administrative, and religious developments, many of which laid the foundation for the successes of later pharaohs. One of Mentuhotep III's most notable achievements was his ambitious building program. Following in the footsteps of his father, he sought to restore and expand many of the temples and monuments that had fallen into disrepair during the First Intermediate Period. However, he also initiated new construction projects that reflected his vision for a unified and powerful Egypt. Among these projects, the most significant was the construction of the Great Temple Complex at el-Bahari. Situated on the west bank of the Nile, near the modern city of Luxor, this temple was designed to serve as a funerary monument for Mentuhotep III and a place of worship dedicated to the gods. The temple complex was an architectural marvel of its time, featuring a series of terraces, colonnades, and chapels that were intricately decorated with reliefs and inscriptions. The Deir el-Bahari temple not only demonstrated the wealth and power of the pharaoh, but also served as a symbol of the stability and unity that Mentuhotep III sought to maintain. By building such an impressive monument, he was sending a clear message to both his subjects and potential rivals that Egypt was once again a strong and unified nation under his rule. Another important aspect of Mentuhotep III's building program was his focus on infrastructure. He recognized that for Egypt to remain united and prosperous, it needed a strong and efficient system of roads, canals, and fortifications. To this end, he ordered the construction and repair of many of the country's key transportation routes, particularly those that connected the capital with outlying regions. These improvements not only facilitated trade and communication, but also allowed the central government to maintain control over distant parts of the kingdom. The journey to Punt. One of the most celebrated events of Mentuhotep III's reign was his expedition to the land of Punt, a region that lay to the south and east of Egypt, possibly along the coast of modern-day Somalia or Yemen. The land of Punt was known for its wealth of exotic goods, including incense, ebony, ivory, and gold, and had long been a trading partner of Egypt. Mentuhotep III's decision to send an expedition to Punt was likely motivated by a desire to re-establish and expand Egypt's trade networks, which had been disrupted during the First Intermediate Period. The journey was a significant undertaking, involving a fleet of ships that sailed down the Red Sea and into the waters of Punt. The expedition was a success, and the goods that were brought back to Egypt not only enriched the kingdom but also demonstrated the pharaoh's ability to project power and influence far beyond the borders of his own country. The Punt expedition is recorded in a series of inscriptions, which describe the wealth of goods that were obtained and the favorable reception that the Egyptians received from the people of Punt. These inscriptions also highlight the religious significance of the journey, as the goods from Punt were seen as offerings to the gods, particularly the god Ammonius, who was rapidly becoming the most important deity in the Egyptian pantheon. The success of the Punt expedition was a major achievement for Mentuhotep III, solidifying his reputation as a capable and ambitious ruler. It also reinforced the idea that Egypt was once again a major player on the international stage, capable of engaging in long-distance trade and diplomacy. Religion and the cult of Ammonius. Religion played a central role in Mentuhotep III's reign, as it did in the lives of all ancient Egyptians. However, during his time on the throne, there were significant developments in the religious landscape of Egypt, particularly concerning the worship of the god Ammonius. Ammonius, who was originally a relatively minor god associated with the city of Thebes, began to rise in prominence during the 11th dynasty, particularly under the reign of Mentuhotep II. By the time Mentuhotep III came to power, Ammonius had become one of the most important gods in Egypt, and his cult was rapidly expanding. Mentuhotep III was a devout worshipper of Ammonius, and he did much to promote the god's cult during his reign. He commissioned numerous temples and shrines dedicated to Ammonius, many of which were located in Thebes, which was the pharaoh's capital and the center of Ammonius worship. These temples not only served as places of worship, but also as symbols of the pharaoh's piety and his close relationship with the gods. The rise of Ammonius' cult during Mentuhotep III's reign had significant political implications as well. The god was closely associated with the pharaoh's authority, and by promoting Ammonius worship, Mentuhotep III was reinforcing the idea that his rule was divinely sanctioned. This connection between the pharaoh and Ammonius would become even more pronounced in later dynasties, particularly during the New Kingdom, when Ammonius would become the chief deity of the Egyptian pantheon. Diplomacy and foreign relations. While Mentuhotep III's reign was primarily focused on domestic issues, he was also involved in foreign affairs, particularly with Egypt's neighbors to the south and east. The Punt expedition is the most famous example of his diplomatic efforts, but there were other instances in which he engaged with foreign powers. To the south, in Nubia, Egypt maintained a long-standing relationship that was both cooperative and competitive. Nubia was a source of valuable resources, particularly gold, and the Egyptians had established a series of fortifications along the Nile to protect their interests in the region. Mentuhotep III likely continued this policy, ensuring that Egypt's southern border remained secure and that the flow of resources from Nubia continued unabated. To the east, the Sinai Peninsula was another area of strategic importance. The region was rich in minerals, particularly copper and turquoise, and the Egyptians had long conducted mining expeditions there. Mentuhotep III is believed to have sent several expeditions to the Sinai, both to extract these valuable resources and to maintain control over the area. These efforts were crucial in ensuring that Egypt had access to the materials needed for its building projects and for trade. Mentuhotep III's foreign policy was characterized by a combination of diplomacy, military strength, and economic interests. By maintaining peaceful and productive relationships with his neighbors, he was able to secure the resources that Egypt needed to prosper while avoiding the costly and destructive conflicts that had plagued previous dynasties. The legacy of Mentuhotep III. Mentuhotep III's reign may not be as well known as those of some of Egypt's more famous pharaohs, but his impact on the country's history is undeniable. He was a ruler who understood the importance of stability, unity, and continuity, and he worked tirelessly to ensure that Egypt remained strong and prosperous. One of the most lasting aspects of his legacy is the architectural achievements of his reign. The temple complex at Deir el-Bahari stands as a testament to his vision and ambition, and it served as an inspiration for later pharaohs, including Hatshepsut, who would build her own mortuary temple at the same site. The infrastructure improvements that he initiated also had a lasting impact, helping to ensure that Egypt remained a unified and efficient state. Mentuhotep III's promotion of Ammonius cult also had a profound effect on Egyptian religion and politics. By elevating Ammonius to a position of prominence, he laid the groundwork for the god's eventual rise to supremacy in the Egyptian pantheon. This association between the pharaoh and Ammonius would become a central theme in later periods of Egyptian history, particularly during the New Kingdom. However, perhaps the most important aspect of Mentuhotep III's legacy is the role he played in the transition from the chaotic First Intermediate Period to the stable and prosperous Middle Kingdom. By building on the achievements of his father and continuing the work of unification and restoration, he helped to create a strong and stable Egypt that would endure for centuries. Speculations and anecdotes. While much of what we know about Mentuhotep III comes from inscriptions and monuments, there are also many aspects of his reign that remain shrouded in mystery. For example, the exact nature of his relationship with his father, Mentuhotep II, is not fully understood. Some historians speculate that there may have been tension between the two, particularly as the younger Mentuhotep sought to establish his own legacy. However, there is little concrete evidence to support this, and it is equally possible that the two worked closely together to ensure the continuity of their dynasty. Another area of speculation concerns Mentuhotep III's death and the succession of his son, Mentuhotep IV. The circumstances surrounding his death are unclear, and some scholars have suggested that there may have been a power struggle or even a conspiracy that led to his demise. However, this is purely speculative, as the historical record provides no definitive answers. There are also intriguing questions about Mentuhotep III's religious beliefs and practices. While it is clear that he was a devout worshipper of Ammonius, some have wondered whether he may have also been interested in other, more esoteric forms of religion. The Middle Kingdom was a time of religious innovation and experimentation, and it is possible that Mentuhotep III was involved in or influenced by some of these new ideas. However, without more evidence, this remains a topic of speculation. Conclusion. Mentuhotep III was a pharaoh who ruled during a time of great change and transformation in Egypt. His reign was marked by a commitment to unity, stability, and the continued development of his kingdom. Through his ambitious building projects, his promotion of religious and cultural practices, and his diplomatic and economic policies, he helped to lay the foundations for the Middle Kingdom, one of the most successful and enduring periods in Egyptian history. Though his reign is not as well documented as those of some of his successors, the legacy of Mentuhotep III can still be seen in the monuments, temples, and cultural practices that he helped to create. His story is a reminder of the importance of leadership, vision, and determination in the face of challenges and uncertainty. As we look back on the history of ancient Egypt, Mentuhotep III stands out as a ruler who understood the power of unity and the importance of building a strong and lasting legacy for future generations.